whether it happens in a swanky restaurant or office meeting room. BDSM contract negotiations are a meeting of equals. It shouldn't be adversarial. It really should be fun, sexy, and a little bit exciting for everyone involved. Hey guys, I'm Morgan from BDSM Relationships and Education. Welcome to the second part on the video about contract negotiations, inspired by the contract negotiations of Cristian and Ana in the 50 Shades of Grey series. So if you're new to the channel, please make sure you click the subscribe button, and that way you can keep up with all the videos that I put out. I tend to do at least 2 videos per week, and I'm right now catching up because I did miss a couple of videos. So you'll have lots coming up in the next few weeks. So today we're going to take a look at the contract negotiations in 50 Shades, as I mentioned. I already did part 1 where we talked about the actual contract and the rules and everything that's in that. If you want to check out part 1, it'll be linked in the description box. Now we're going to talk about the actual contract negotiations that they engaged in. So as I mentioned in the intro, when you go into negotiating a contract with BDSM or any kind of BDSM relationship, everybody that is in the negotiations should be considered an equal. We are all equal until we agree to give up power or take power or whatever. So that's something that's really, really important. You see a lot of people who are new to BDSM kind of approach and assume that they have power over somebody else just because they chose dominant on a drop-down menu or whatever. You see also sometimes submissives who feel that everybody is their dominant, and they try to push that on people who don't want it. So everybody is an equal until we agree otherwise. Just always keep that in mind. And anybody who approaches you with the get on your knees and worship me because I am a dominant sort of attitude is probably somebody you just want to avoid in general. My opinion, but I don't think it's cool. So let's get into the meat of it. In the book, they're meeting at a swanky restaurant, and Ana is dressed to impress after borrowing some Kate's clothing. And in the movie, they do the contract negotiations in Cristian's office in a meeting room, which is kind of weird to me because that's like the least sexy environment I can think of. But I'm also not somebody who fetishizes office stuff, so maybe you think it's pretty hot. But either way, Ana is again dressed to impress, and I think she was trying to use that to knock Cristian a little off guard, which kind of sets the tone for the whole thing. And they do seem a little adversarial, and that's why I mentioned it in the intro. They seem to be like butting heads a little bit and approaching the situation in a way that is, where they're trying to get something out of the other instead of kind of coming together and negotiating a mutually satisfying relationship. So it's a little bit of an odd attitude to bring to the table, so to speak. The first thing that she points out to him is that a BDSM contract is not legal. And it isn't. And she was a little miffed that he didn't actually tell her that. Now, in his defense, and this will be one of the few times that I do defend Cristian, I think that he probably assumed she knew that it's not a legally binding thing. But a lot of people don't understand that. They feel that once they've signed something, that is, they've agreed to it, which, I mean, is true. I think when it comes to BDSM contracts, a lot of people just don't understand that they certainly aren't legally binding, and I think we all kind of get that, but they aren't necessarily morally binding or ethically binding if you're in a bad situation. You can walk away from a BDSM relationship at any point that it is no longer good for you. If it is verging into abusive, you can leave. If you are unhappy, so if your situation is getting into an abusive thing, you can leave. If you are unhappy for whatever reason, you can leave, you can renegotiate, you talk to your partner. You're not stuck in this situation because you signed a piece of paper. You know, even marriage is legally binding, but you can get a divorce, you can separate, that kind of thing. So BDSM is no different. And I just really want to stress that because I know I see questions all the time from people that are in a bad situation and feeling trapped and feeling like because they've signed a contract or because they made a commitment that they can't leave. And I just want them to know that they can. And it's really important that people understand that. So yeah, I will probably mention at least 1 or 2 more times that these are not legally binding contracts. Just keep that in mind. Now, Cristian, of course, points out that relationships are built on trust, which is a very important thing to know. Relationships are built on trust. If you don't trust your partner, then I don't know what kind of relationship you really have. Of course, he keeps doing things that shows that he's untrustworthy throughout the books and the movies and everything. So he's probably not the best one to be talking about how everything's built on trust. But again, I don't know. You can tell I'm really not a fan of Cristian. So again, they haven't agreed to anything. She hasn't agreed to be in a DS relationship with him or anything like that. And then he starts bugging her about the food again. And I mentioned in the other half of this video about how food becomes such a huge thing throughout the books. And it's Ana trying to hold on to that last little bit of control. And I know that there's been a lot of sort of talk, especially when the books first came out, about how her name is Ana and she has this issue surrounding food and everything else. So I'm not going to get into it, but I think that it is really important to recognize that she is trying desperately to maintain some control over her life where she feels that she doesn't have control. She's, fallen head over heels. She's very infatuated in love, whatever, with this very suave, powerful man. And he's trying to assert his dominance over her. And she's just feeling really overwhelmed and lost. So I think that is a very, sort of normal almost reaction on her part. And I think that she does come across as a bit of a sympathetic character in this one particular light, where she's just trying to hold on to some sort of control over her life. So anyways, Ana outlines some of her issues with the contract as it stands. She points out, and again, I was so proud of Ana for this one, that the contract and the relationship is not just for her benefit. It's not that she gets to explore her sexuality and he's doing this altruistically and it's nothing in it for him. I mean, he's getting something out of it too. He's getting sexual satisfaction. He's getting the things that he needs. In fact, the way this is set up, he's getting more of his needs met than she is getting hers. So he kind of admits that, oh, okay, it's not just for your benefit. And it's like, well, of course not. Relationships are not one-sided things, and we shouldn't pretend that they are. Even in DS relationships, a lot of people seem to have this idea where it's like, oh, it's all for the benefit of the dominant and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, that's fun for fantasy, but in reality, if the submissive is not getting his needs met, he's not going to stick around. So, that's just the way it is. She points out that she's not okay with this obey at all times thing. Now, I'm going to go with duh, just because, this is a brand new relationship. They've known each other for maybe a week. Obeying at all times and all things, all that kind of stuff. That is, I mean, people do that in BDSM relationships, but not in the beginning. These things build over time. You don't just be like, well, I've known you for a week, you're kind of hot, so now you're going to do everything I say every time I say it. It's not realistic. People cede and take more control as they trust each other, as they get to know each other better, as they find that they have similar values and goals in life and everything else. You can cede that control to somebody if you know that they have your best interests at heart. If you've known someone a week, you don't know if they're just out to, get laid and take off, or if they really are going to make any kind of commitment to you. So, I mean, I know that in some relationships things happen very quickly. I know in my current relationship we moved really quickly. but we didn't jump into a TPE relationship the moment we met. She also points out that the language where he says he wants the use of her body otherwise, I think is the actual word that is a problem for her. She says that it's too vague, and I absolutely agree. When you're making these negotiations and you're agreeing to things, you should know what you're agreeing to. And to leave open-ended language like that is a real problem. We talked about in the other video where, you know, if you say I expect monogamy, you kind of have to say what you mean by that. You can't just assume that everybody has the same definition of monogamy, because what if I say monogamy and I mean that we won't have sex with anybody else, but I like to play with other people? So, you know, if that's a problem for my partner, then I'm going to break that agreement without even realizing it. So you need to really define everything. And kinky people are infamous for this. We talk about everything and we kind of beat it all to death, really. But just being able to be on the same page and understand what everybody is meaning when they say these words is really, really important. So having vague language like that is no good. You want to be really specific. Now, Anna does not like the punishment dynamic, and I can't blame her. Not a lot of people are into the punishment dynamics. Some are, but a lot of us aren't. Many of us are into the sort of punishment where it's, oh, you bad, bad partner, I'm going to give you a spanking because you've been so naughty. And it's all in fun and that kind of thing. I think that, you know, when transgressions happen in most DS style relationships, people sit down and they have a discussion about it. And they do in punishment dynamics as well. But they don't feel the need to inflict a punishment on somebody unless that's something that you've agreed to. And again, punishment dynamics are not necessarily common. They happen and they're great for the people who are into them. But for a lot of us, it's just not something that we're into. She also questions him about the eye contact restrictions, and he kind of blows her off for this. He doesn't explain why he's insisting on this eye contact restriction, and I think that this shows one of the big problems with his style of dominance and just sort of in general. If you give rules to a submissive, they're far more likely to follow the rules and obey the rules if they understand why the rules are in place in the first place. So if I just say, don't ever look me in the eye, that's kind of leaving people like, well, why not? Like, what's the problem with that? Why don't you want me to do that? If I explain, well, during playtime, I don't want you to make eye contact with me. I want you to keep your eyes lowered because it's a sign of respect and that kind of thing, then somebody is far more likely to do it and, you know, enjoy it because it's kind of kinky fun or whatever. But, you know, if I just say, don't look me in the eye ever, then it's kind of weird, right? So I think that it applies for that specific example, but also for a wider variety of things. If I give rules, I like to explain why I'm giving this rule. Why is this important to me? Why have I chosen this as a rule? That kind of thing, so that my partner understands, and I know that my partner is much more likely to follow the rules if they understand why those rules are in place. And when it comes to the activity list, she doesn't understand what a lot of the stuff is. And I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, she's totally new to not only BDSM, but she's pretty new to sex as well. So she doesn't understand what a lot of these things are. You can't really agree or be like, yeah, okay, I'm totally into that if you don't even know what the thing is. So this can be a real problem. Furthermore, you can't consent to something unless you actually, you know, give proper informed consent. If you don't understand what it is, what the risks are, what the benefits are, all of that, like how can you really give authentic informed consent? So I talk about that in my consent video, which I will link down below. But it's really important, you know, especially like I encourage people when they're new to do an activity list, and they're not always going to understand what it is, but you know, do the research, find out what the things are, talk to your partner, find out what those things are. And you don't have to, like, just because you said you'd be interested in trying it on an activity list doesn't mean you're obligated to do it or anything like that. Like, but just it gives you good ideas. And we'll talk about that in a future video. But anyways, I really felt for her where she's like, I don't even know what this thing is, and you want me to agree to it and sign a contract about it? That's kind of crazy. And I agree. So he points out, of course, Cristian points out that he didn't have to have this discussion with the 15. And that's kind of weird to me. Like, you know, every person is different. The relationship that I have with my current partner is different than the relationship that I had with my previous partners. A casual relationship is different than a more serious relationship. And all of those negotiations are different. We negotiate a lot in BDSM. You negotiate before play scenes, before a new partner, like all kinds of different times. So the negotiations can be different. You know, with somebody who is more experienced, it may be a bit of a quicker process because you're already kind of on the same page and you speak the same language, but you still have to actually go through and agree to things. You don't just hand somebody a contract and have them sign it and that's that with no talking. Like, that's just not a realistic portrayal of BDSM in any way. So when they are talking about her problems regarding the obey at all times and the whole dominant and submissive thing, he tells her, he's like, oh, just think about it as role playing. And a lot of people do role play DS, and that's fine, and I'm not going to judge people for that. But what he's talking about is kind of like that total power exchange, that TPE style relationship, and then telling her, just think about it like role playing. And it's like, well, what is it? Is it a role play where you guys can step out of those roles at any point in time? Or is it a total power exchange relationship where she's expected to obey his commands without hesitation, right? Like, you can't have it both ways. If you want to role play DS, like, more power to you. You can absolutely do that. But for a lot of us that engage in, you know, 24/7 or TPE style relationships, it's not a role play. I mean, it really is the structure of our relationships. So you do need to kind of, it's muddying the waters, and he shouldn't be doing that, especially if he's like this super experienced dominant guy. He should know better. But so she expresses that he's afraid, or she's afraid rather, that he's going to hurt her. Ana is terrified that Cristian is going to harm her. I can't say I blame her, considering the way that he's introduced BDSM to her, which was quite possibly the worst introduction to BDSM I've, you know, ever read about. Okay, that's not necessarily true. A lot of people are way worse than that, but it wasn't a good introduction. The way he's really thrown her into a lot of this stuff and not really explained a lot of it to her, he just kind of makes assumptions that she knows, you know, what all this stuff is, and she's clueless. So I think that it's also normal for anybody who's new to BDSM to worry about that. Like, it's pretty reasonable. If you look on like FetLife and stuff like that, and you see the pictures of what some people do, it can be very extreme. People are into some pretty wild stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're brand new and like you're just kind of getting titillated with the idea of, like, you know, a barehanded spanking, and then you see, you know, people with bloody asses or whatever, and then you're like, that's what I'm getting myself into. I'm sure it's terrifying. So I think that that's totally normal fear to have for someone who's new. And again, it's also normal for like that kind of an introduction to BDSM where it's just like, blah, here you go. No explanation, just in your face, blah. So I think that he could have mitigated those fears a lot more by explaining things more and giving her a more gentle and you know, slower introduction to things, instead of, you know, being like, oh, I want you to be my 24/7 slave. Here's a contract to sign. We've known each other a week. So he then, of course, pressures her to agree to things that she doesn't really understand, and that really bothers me. I mean, pressuring anybody in any circumstances is really a shitty thing to do. You shouldn't be pushing people to do things that they hesitate on. But she doesn't understand a lot of this stuff. She's so new, and she's really, really naive. So yeah, like, it's just not a good idea to pressure someone into these kind of things. And a lot of it is sexual activities and, you know, activities that could result in physical harm. So, like, that's really bad, because in those kind of situations, if somebody is not consenting, it's sexual assault, it's plain old assault. Like, I mean, this is serious stuff. So it's a red flag to me that he should not be pushing and pressuring her in any way with this stuff. And I think that she understands that, but she just doesn't quite have, what it takes to stand up, because she feels that she's very much in love. And she's so overwhelmed by the whole situation. So he's also really dismissive of her questions. And when you're the more experienced partner in a relationship, you really should be willing to be more flexible, right? To say like, okay, well, I know you've never tried this. Here's the good things. Here's the bad things. If you're interested in trying it once to see if you like it or not, then we can talk about, doing it again after that. And you decide, do you like it? Great, we can do it again. Do you not like it? Fine, we won't do it anymore. So you need to kind of have that flexibility and be open to that kind of thing. It can't be just my way or the highway, or you're going to find yourself single pretty quick, or at least you should find yourself single. So yeah, having that flexibility and understanding and getting that people are new. Because they're new, they're not experienced in all of the things. So I mean, come on. Even those of us who've been doing this for a long period of time, I mean, I've been doing it 20 years. There's still things that I haven't done or that I don't have experience in. Like, it's a big world out there. There's lots and lots of things, which is good because it's exciting and fun, but I don't know. There's always something new. So overall, I found that they treated this contract negotiation like a business thing, where they're both, trying to gain the advantage and everything else. And to me, when you're negotiating in BDSM, whether it's for a contract or just, for a play scene or whatever, it should be something where you're after each other's pleasure, and that kind of thing. So I will say, oh, hey, I really enjoy this. What do you think of this thing? Do you want to try that? Or, I've had a lot of people approach me because, if there's certain types of play that you are good at, that you do a lot, people kind of get to know that about you in the community. So I'm quite well known for like piercing and medical style play. So people who are interested in those types of play will come up to me and say, hey, I know you really enjoy doing medical play. I really would like to experience this. Is this something you'd be interested in doing with me? And then we can talk about it from there. And it's something that, they know I'm going to enjoy because I enjoy doing these things. And it's something that they want to try and they're going to enjoy as well. So, we figure out, are we compatible to do this play activity, or are we compatible to have a relationship and that sort of thing? So you're looking for those points of compatibility, not an adversarial situation where it's like, okay, well, I want to get this, this, and this out of this situation, so I'm going to, try to, win them over. I'm going to try to sneak this one by them, that kind of thing. So I think that's a bit of a problem. But anyways, thank you very much for watching the video. I know these have been kind of long. I've just had a lot to say on it. And we're going to get back to doing some more fun play stuff when it comes to the 50 Shades series, where I'm going to show you guys how to do things. I've kind of run into the problem. I thought of this series, and then I ran into the problem where they don't do a lot of actual kinky stuff in the books. So I don't have a lot to teach you as far as that goes. But anyways, if you want to learn kinky things, then check out my series on flogging, which is in progress right now. I'm going to have the next flogging video up very soon. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. If you enjoyed what I had to say in this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you have questions about BDSM, whether it's about this video or anything else whatsoever, leave them for me in the comments and I will, get to them. I'll either answer right in the comments, or I will try to, do a video about what you've asked, if it's something like that. And yeah, we will learn together about things. I have a lot of knowledge. I've been doing this for 20 years, so I want to be able to share that with you guys. I just need to know what you want to learn. So leave me those kind of comments, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.